everyone. I'm Amy Wheeler, and I am happy to welcome you to the Sunday service for January 16th, 2022. Coming from the North Chapel in snowy, very chilly, but always lovely Woodstock, Vermont. Here we are, meeting back online, hopefully temporarily, while we stay home and keep each other safe and cared for, if from a distance for now. Even so, it's good to meet up for some inspiration and kindness from some familiar faces and voices. And I'm glad to be here with you, sharing in the warmth of connection and community. So I really enjoyed thinking about the reflection theme for this month. With Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday this weekend, it seems like a really good time to reflect on the first Unitarian Universalist principle, which is recognizing and believing in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. To me, this is a principle of inclusion, unity, and belonging. So how do we take this idea and apply it with understanding and compassion in our own lives? I think that a good place to start is just by being curious about how some of the assumptions and judgments we might make, often without even realizing we're making them, can lead to separation and suffering for ourselves and for others. I believe that the good news is we can all learn to notice when we're creating unnecessary separations and change direction toward a more loving and inclusive way of being. We all want to feel like we belong, and we can choose to reach out and find belonging together. One of my favorite teachers is Tara Brach, and she puts it this way in her beautiful book, True Refuge. Most of us need to be reminded that we are good, that we belong. If we knew how powerfully our thoughts, words, and actions affected the hearts of those around us, we'd reach out and join hands again and again. Our relationships have the potential to be a sacred refuge, a place of healing and awakening. With each person we meet, we can learn to look behind the mask and see the one who longs to love and be loved. So may you all feel love and belonging in this new year. May you reach out in openness and friendship again and again and feel others reaching back. Now, please join in singing this beautiful song of protest and unity. We shall overcome.
Hello, my name is Laura Foley, and I'm here in the very wintry hemlock woods of Pomfret, Vermont. And I wanted to share with you a poem about my sister who passed away in November, and I hadn't seen her for a long time. Into the air. Sifting my estranged sister's papers after her death, I find a 1996 associate's degree, community college, high honors. I see the sun shining in my window's periphery, rosy light eking below hills, like my will to call her. All those years, these woods kept hemming the valley. All the fall days, these trees kept shedding their leaves, etching November in me. I find a recent photograph, the only glimpse I've had for years, seeing in my sister's face a mirror I never noticed, her smile a bit roguish. Warm congratulations on your degree, I speak to empty air. Wonder if she hears.
I can see the river Jordan, river deep and river wide.
I can see its muddy water. I must cross to the other side.
I have walked through nights of darkness as I traveled on my way.
Now the morning sun is rising.
I can see a brighter day. I've come a long way on this journey. Now here on Jordan's banks I stand. I followed a road that leads to freedom. Now I'm
Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, January the 16th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Tutu, King, and the Gentle Engine of Delight. It's about the tender joy of possibility. Welcome. Welcome to the dreamers and to the seekers of spirit. Welcome to the wanderers and to the worshipers. Welcome to the open ones and the broken ones who are just like me, blessed and beloved beneath the lucky stars of heaven, given in care and compassion for one another, soul level deep, given in care and compassion both in good times and in tempest, in conflict and in consensus, held, whole, and honored by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls I say good morning. It is good to be together. I'd like to begin this morning with a truncated quote from South Africa. The quotation comes to us from a woman named Mpho Tutu. Her father is known to us, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He died recently, the day after Christmas. He was 90 years old and young. Desmond Tutu was an incredible man, and at his passing there was a worldwide outpouring of love. Love rained down, a mighty, gentle rain fell down from every corner of the sky on the nation of South Africa, where he and his soul twin, Nelson Mandela, slowly changed the whole wide world. The Washington Post reported 2 weeks ago, on Sunday, January 2, that the ashes of the revered anti-apartheid leader were interred in a private ceremony in Cape Town. The day before, on New Year's Day, there was a state funeral, and unsurprisingly, it was attended by a very large crowd. One could attend in person, but it was also televised and live streamed. People from all over the world tuned in, and during this ceremony, Mpho Tutu, Archbishop Desmond's beloved daughter, spoke beautifully. Quoting her father, she said, "The love that the world has shown has warmed the cockles of our hearts." I am warmed as well by that quotation, and given to the idea of possibility. Okay, so if I asked you whether or not you thought that you could change the world, what would you say? Would you say, no, I cannot? Or would you be daring and say, I think I can? I think I can is a good mantra for us. We should repeat it over and over to ourselves until we truly believe it. I think I can. I think I can. It's like the children's story by Waddy Piper, the one about the locomotive engine. Chug, 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 and puff, puff, puff. Do you remember this story? The Little Engine That Could is a story about determination. It's about a happy-hearted train that had a purpose. The train was full of good gifts for children on the far side of the mountain. In Waddy Piper's words, there were toy animals, giraffes, and teddy bears, and a baby elephant. There were dolls with blue eyes and yellow curls, and dolls with brown eyes and bobbed heads. And there was the funniest little clown that you ever saw. And there were trains and cars and toy engines and tops and knives and picture puzzles and books. It was exciting. There were enough toys to make a makeshift Christmas morning out of season. But there was more. There were big golden oranges and red-cheeked apples and bottles of creamy milk for breakfast. There was spinach for dinners and peppermint drops and lollipops for after-meal treats. It was going to be so much fun, but somewhere along the way, something terrible happened. The happy-hearted train broke down. It couldn't move another inch. A shiny new engine soon came along, and the clown and the dolls and the toy animals waved it down, and they asked for help, but the shiny new train refused them and moved on. Then a freight train came along, and once again they waved it down, and once again that train refused them and went on its way. And then a third train came along, but it was too tired to help. Finally, a fourth train came along. It was a little engine, and it was blue. And this little blue engine heard the toys ask for safe passage up and over the mountain and said, well, you know, I'm not very big, and I've never been over the mountain before. The brave little blue train reflected on the challenge, and then it made a choice. It said, I think I can. I think I can. And with a little puffing and a little chugging, all were on their happy-hearted way once again. The brave little blue train was a mountain climber. She was so determined. From the nadir of the valley to the summit and beyond, you can't help but be moved by her, to be driven by the little blue engine that could. Desmond Tutu was just like this train. Humble and determined, he carried us over the mountain, even though he'd never been there before. That's why we love him. That's why he lives on in us, even now, especially now. What kind of power is that? Is it hubris, or is it faith? Desmond Tutu stood on the shoulders of Martin Luther King. King was inspired by the peace and disobedience of Henry David Thoreau. So there's a lineage of wisdom and commitment to peace and justice. There's a lineage of those who are driven by the engine of delight. Are we on that train? Should we be? Can you and I be just as driven and committed as they were? Tutu was a joyful song. He sang out from the mountaintop, and his call resounded through the valley. We were moved by him sympathetically. His wisdom sounds an echo in the soul. How can we keep from singing the song of freedom? Desmond Tutu did not have confidence. He did not have hubris. He was not brazen. He had faith, a faith that gave him courage, and that was all he needed. He was spiritually ripped, chasing down oppression and searching for what he could find of peace, of solace, of sanctuary. His journey is part of the hero's journey, the journey that artists try to capture, the journey that painters try to paint and poets write and rhyme about. A poet writes, I pulled off into the forest, and there were crickets clicking in the ferns, and I felt the wheel of fortune, and I heard my fate turn, and I went running down a white sand road. I was running like a white-assed deer, running to lose the blues to the innocence in here. These are the clouds of Michelangelo, muscular, with God and sun gold shine on your witness. That spiritual ripness of his, that spiritual muscularity was born of bravest witness. He was so clear-eyed and sharp-sighted, he faced monumental challenge in life. And he responded by saying, apartheid is as evil, as immoral, as unchristian in my view as Nazism. And in my view, the Reagan administration's support and collaboration with it is equally immoral, evil, and totally unchristian without remainder. Archbishop Tutu knew that one cannot compromise in one's witness of the holy, in one's recognition of the inherent worth and dignity of every person. This first principle of ours, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, it does not reduce to relativism or to paralysis. It is not the means by which we can imagine that everyone and everything is okay. It is the force that drives us to call on the better angels of our nature. It is the still small voice that preserves in us the belief that the best in us is possible. It is not poetic, it is not romantic, it is a risky and real fight. It calls us into conflict and into consensus indifferently. It calls us in both directions because it understands joy and justice are one and the same. Amy Goodwin reminds us, in 1988, Archbishop Tutu risked jail by organizing a boycott of regional elections in South Africa. Tutu said, I urge Black people in this diocese not to vote in the October elections. I hope that white Anglicans will join their Black fellow Anglicans in that action. I am aware of the penalties of attaching to this call, he said. I am not defying the government. I'm obeying God. How high are the mountains that we need to climb these days? How high are the mountains of earth and stone, and how high the mountains of political disjuncture? How high are the mountains of social oppression, and how high the mountains of maladjustment to climate change? How high are the mountains of despair? And where is the crack of light that brings us hope? The best in us is always possible. In life and far beyond it, I am reminded of a passage in the writing of Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin is the creative force behind the West Wing series on television. In an episode called Game On, which was about the re-election campaigns across the country, a character named Will Bailey is determined. Will Bailey is the Democratic campaign manager for a candidate named Horton Wild, an Orange County, California candidate for the House of Representatives. Horton Wild was an impressive candidate, a sea change candidate for Orange County. Unfortunately for the campaign manager, and very unfortunately for the candidate, Horton Wilder died not long before the election. Will Bailey, however, driven as he was, did not give up on the campaign. The campaign went on without its candidate, which seemed absurd to some. It seemed like a joke, but it was not. The candidate died, but the ideas that drove the candidacy did not. The ideas went on without him, saying, I think I can. I think I can. So it was that a dead man was running for office in California. June Wheeler, a fictional staff reporter for the San Jose Mercury News, she broke this pretense. She called it out at an otherwise normal press conference featuring Will Bailey behind the podium. She said, Mr. Bailey, we are all sitting here pretending like this is a regular press conference, and you are very engaging up there, but your candidate died. So why isn't this all a little preposterous? It was an excellent question, and Will Bailey met it head on. He said, Chuck Webb is a seven-term congressman who, as chairman of not one but two commerce subcommittees, has taken money from companies that he regulates. He's on the board for the National Rifle Association and once challenged another congressman to a fist fight on the floor over an amendment to make stalkers submit to background checks before buying AR-15s, AK-47s, street sweepers, MAC-10s, MAC-11s. He joined protests designed to frighten pregnant women. What is your point? The reporter asked. And Will Bailey answered. He responded poignantly. He said, there are worse things in the world than no longer being alive. Now, if we chose to, we could wallow in a sea of despair. We could indulge the remorseful energy, and surely it has its place. In the words of William Shakespeare, we could sit upon the ground and tell sad stories about the death of kings, but the world would go on without us. On the other hand, we could turn and face the mountains that we have to climb with a positive attitude, whispering to ourselves, I think we can. I think we can. This is a great honor when we are driven by the engines of delight. Our intentions turned toward joy and justice, our hands held out in hope, reaching to connect with those from whom we have been estranged. In a speech entitled The Case for Optimism, it's a beautiful title. In a speech entitled The Case for Optimism, Al Gore was looking up. He set his sights high on the environmental mountain that stands before us all. And he said, things take longer to happen than you think they will. And then they happen much faster than you thought they could. I really think that that's where we are these days. He recognized that there is a political challenge that attends the issue of climate change, and he applauded those who were brave and honest enough to stray from politics. We must do this in order to make the changes that are necessary in order to save the planet and ourselves. He tells the story of Debbie Dooley, She's pretty awesome. Debbie Dooley lives in Georgia. She is politically engaged. She is the chair of the Atlanta Tea Party, which, needless to say, leans strongly to the right. She was approached by political operatives who had curious views on climate change. They tried to enroll her in strategies that would benefit the fossil fuel industry. They tried to enlist her in an effort to make solar power more expensive. But according to Al Gore, she had just put solar panels on her roof, so she didn't understand the request. So she went on to form an alliance with the Sierra Club, and they formed a new organization, and they called it the Green Tea Party. And they defeated the proposal. It's important that we think in new and different ways these days. Desmond Tutu was great at this. He knew the power of connecting with those from whom we are estranged. Now, I am inspired by Desmond Tutu, and I try to do this when I can. Not long after, July in 2008, I was in a North Carolina airport with a pack on my back and a guitar in my hand. I walked over toward the bathrooms, and I saw a woman who was dressed in fatigues and combat boots, and she startled me. And she was just standing there, quietly, with her back against the wall, standing on her right leg with her left boot on the wall behind her. She startled me, maybe because I was opposed to the wars after 9/11. I was neither shocked or awed by them. I was horrified. So when I saw this woman, so obviously military, those feelings came up within me, and those were the feelings that I expressed. I was stricken with feelings of grief, and she could see this in the gesture of my body. Now, I'm okay about rejecting the wars, but I'm not okay about rejecting the people who were in the military. So I put down my guitar, and I unshouldered my backpack, and I stood quietly just as she did. I positioned my body in the same way, and I looked at her, and I smiled, and with my eyes I said, "I'm sorry." I'm not sure what the date was exactly, but I'm sure it was after July of 2008 because the bad news was still ringing in my ear. There had been a shooting in the Tennessee Valley at the UU Church in Knoxville. A hateful man had strode into the church, and he drew a gun in the sanctuary. And a man named Greg McKendry deliberately stood in front of the gunman, and he gave his life protecting the lives of others. And a woman named Linda Krager died on that day as well. So all of this, the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in Knoxville, Tennessee, all of this came up for me when I saw the woman in the airport. And I just stood there by the bathrooms, and I cried. And when I got home, I wrote a song, and I called it True Believer. It was about the meeting place between this woman in fatigues and me. The words were these: I want to fight the wars of guns and bad ideas with the one hand over my heart. I want to fight the wars for the ones that I hold dear, defend the glory for the brave and living free. I want to free the wars of oil and masquerade as a welcomed liberator. And I want to be this war, but the cause has been unmade, and now the story needs a reason to truly be. Oh, I tried to say that I true believed, that deep in my heart I'd had an answer. I tried to kill the war of 1945 by bombing Hiroshima. And I tried to kill the war, but I nearly burned the sky by ignoring the different ways of living free. I thought I'd win the wars in northern Vietnam and Negro subjugation. I thought I'd spin those wars as little Martin's false alarm by killing glory when free at last was living free. Oh, I tried to say that I true believed that deep in my heart I'd had an answer. I tried to wage a war on liberal heart ideals, but there was no fear in the valley. I tried to stage a war in suburban killing fields with the gunshots in Tennessee on Sunday morning. When will we end the wars of guns and bad ideas with the one hand over our heart. When will we end the war for the ones that we hold dear, defend the glory for the brave and living free? Oh, if in my heart I do not yield, then we shall overcome someday. Love rains down in Woodstock just like it does in Cape Town in South Africa. It rains from every corner of the sky, and it falls as snow for us these days, and it lands softly on our shoulder, and it stands on our broad shoulders as we stand on the shoulders of others, on the shoulders of King, Tutu, Thoreau. They lift us up, they boost us, they carry us to higher ground. We began this morning with a quote from Desmond Tutu's beloved daughter. Obviously, it belonged to a longer passage. Honoring her family, Mpho Andrea Tutu had this to say. Daddy would say, "The love the world has shown has warmed the cockles of our hearts." Then, lightheartedly, he would say, "I don't know what a cockle is, but whatever it is, it has been warmed." She said, "Thank you for loving our father, grandfather, husband, uncle, brother, brother-in-law. And to him who has gathered us here, Daddy, Udada, we say thank you for the many ways that you've showed us love, for the many times that you've challenged us, for the many times that you have comforted us." What a lovely dance he offered to the family and to the world. And there is footage of him dancing, presumably to the disco version of We Shall Overcome. Every step of his an act of reverence, every breath of his a prayer, a mantra to be whispered to oneself in times of adversity. I think I can. I think I can. May it be so. Blessed be. Ashe and Amen.